Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about some of the most overpowered legendary lords in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. Starting with Grombrindal, the White Dwarf. This guy is flat out ridiculous. First off, he does have Ancestor Blessings that he can go for. Usually, when you start your campaign, you kind of want to go for Valea's Protection. Lots of casualty replenishment, control, corruption, but there's other things as well. You can buff his entire army. You can buff his personal combat skill to the point that he might become a single Lord Doomstack in his own right. Or you can buff construction in a province that he's in. Regardless of what you choose, Grombrindal's Ancestor Blessing is ridiculously strong. But there is more. A heck of a lot more. He gets melee defense and leadership for his entire army, melee defense for Quarrelers and Iron Drakes only. He gets a reinforcement range, and then we have to look at his special skill line. He gets 15% campaign movement range, he gets ammunition, melee defense, and missile strength for Iron Drakes and War Machine units. Yes, combining him with Malachi, or playing Malachi and getting control of him very quickly is ridiculously powerful. He gets 35% speed for his entire army, as well as extra armor piercing damage for his army. That is ridiculous. He gets vigor loss reduction for his army. He gets melee defense and armor piercing weapon damage when defending. He's good on the offense, he's good on the defense. He is just, frankly, ridiculous. And by the way, that vigor loss reduction does stack with obstinacy, so you're looking at a ridiculous level of vigor loss reduction. And on top of that, Grombrindal himself is pretty damn powerful in battle. He's no Ungrim, but he's certainly very strong, and also unbreakable, because of course he is unbreakable. He's goddamn Grombrindal. But the key point about him is his blue skill line. He gets recruit rank for all units faction-wide, recruitment cost reduction for all armies faction-wide, campaign movement range for all armies faction-wide by 15%. And yes, this does stack with Mountain Strider. Then casualty replenishment, global recruitment, capacity. Grombrindal has the single most overpowered blue skill line in the entire game. But there is also more on top of that, because you see, dwarves can absolutely be a very, very strong race, but usually what kind of holds them back is the fact that they have a lot of powerful enemies to deal with early on in their campaigns. Well, not so much Grombrindal. Grombrindal takes control over his initial province, like this, and then he just goes on a rampage against Malekith and the Dark Elves in general. He has great climate capability, which means all of Nagrand, all of Norska, all of Kislev, if you want to take it, is available to him. He doesn't have many foes. Yes, he does have Valkia and Malekith, but that's really about it in a campaign situation that Grombrindal has to work with. So that gives him an immense level of power. And because you're playing him, you can confederate whichever Dwarven Legendary Lord you want. So if, for instance, in a specific campaign, you're seeing that Thorgrim or Ungrim or Belegar gain a lot of territory, you can confederate the one that has gained the most amount of territory, which gives you a significant level of power in your campaign, because you can build a massive empire over here in Nagrand, and then someone else is building a massive empire in their own territory, and you double up. And since you move around the campaign map faster with all of your armies, then you can understand how ridiculous Grombrindal gets. I think I've conquered a vast portion of the map with Grombrindal and built an empire on it, not just destroying it like, say, a Khorne campaign, but actually conquering it using Grombrindal without pushing for it. Because you can certainly conquer a vast portion of the map fast if you're pushing for it, but Grombrindal just kind of does it naturally, and that's why he's ridiculously overpowered. And number 2, we have Arbaal the Undefeated. Khorne is a very powerful race, but the Arbaal certainly wins out compared to the other campaigns for Khorne. And the reason behind that is that Arbaal is focused on mortal units in his campaign. And mortal units in general are just really, really good in a Khorne campaign. He gets lower construction cost and construction time for those mortal buildings, which means he can get a bunch of these units and heroes faster than the other Khorne campaigns. Like, say what you will about Skarbrand and Skulltaker, yes, they do work out. Yes, they can be ridiculously powerful, but no, they do not compare to the ridiculousness that Arbaal does have in his own campaign. He also gets an upkeep of minus 10% for non-demonic units. And on top of that, he gets global recruitment duration minus 1 turn for all units in his army. So that means he can get, with high bloodletting, he can basically recruit the vast majority of Khorne units in a single turn if he gets bloodletting to a high level. And then when you add bread and bloodshed to that, it ends up being pretty damn powerful, pretty ridiculous. Like, virtually every mortal unit can be recruited by Arbaal, or any unit can be recruited by Arbaal in a single turn in this campaign. And then, on top of that, when you're thinking about Arbaal, and again, mortal units, you get Devastating Flankers for Cast Knights and Skullcrashers, you get Expert Charge Defense for non-demonic infantry units, and you get a further upkeep reduction for his army, as well as making all of those units unbreakable once they get to rank 7, as well as making him unbreakable and causing terror. That is a ludicrous level of power that Arbaal has available to him. And then you have the challenges of Khorne. Challenges of Khorne give you a lot of course, these, Khorne's favor. They give you powerful foes to fight, which means your armies can end up being more experienced. And since you have pretty powerful early game armies, well, you can go for Sarnagrund if you want to early on. But very importantly, you get things like army abilities, upkeep benefits, and just building cults in locations or blood hosts, which means you can have a ludicrous number of armies with blood hosts, with cults. And cults you can double dip, because Khorne's challenges teleport you to a location, but you can also use cults to teleport Arbaal himself. That is why he's ludicrous in his campaign. In fact, some would argue he's the most ridiculous legendary lord in the game. I mean, you could argue about the Changeling, but I'm actually talking about campaigns that are War for Them in this specific video, and the Changeling is not. And finally, at number 1, we have Throgg, the Troll King, his ridiculous majesty. He is quite absurd, even if the research rate bug has been quote-unquote fixed by Creative Assembly, I think, finally. It was possible to just basically speedrun your entire research tree, though I'm not sure if they broke it completely and you're no longer getting any kind of benefit regards to that, but that's not really important, I would argue, at this stage. Because Throgg was ridiculous even without that, and he still is. I mean, he gets a bunch of benefits for trolls. Upkeep benefits, post-battle loot, physical resistance for troll units. That is pretty damn strong. And he can get trolls very quickly in his campaign if he so desires. And then he can get all of these structures as well that give him Trollkind per turn and Troll King's Dominion. Now, the thing about Troll King's Dominion is that, yes, they give you a bunch of benefits, upkeep, leadership, recruit rank, and perfect vigor for troll units at the end, as well as unit capacity for all the kind of troll units you can recruit in the game through Throgg's special mechanics. Like, those mechanics involve you going for a den, a location that has a den on the campaign map. So, for instance, you have 2 Bile Trolls dens to the north of you. You have Cast Troll den. What the game is basically saying is you should beat the crap out of Epidemius and Daniel, because it is to your significant advantage if you do so. But that's really only part of the situation with regards to Throgg. Because you see, Empire of Trolls, what makes it so absurd is that it gives you a bunch of temporary units, kind of like a war army, to all of your armies at the highest level at the Empire Trolls. It gives you a full stack of units once you've upgraded certain things, gotten research, etc., to every army. It doesn't matter if an army has a full stack in it or it's just a lord. That means you can have 40 units in many armies or just 21, 22. Like, literally, you can have a lord and a monstrous horde attached to them once you use that. And considering the kind of benefits trolls themselves have, they have pretty decent level of armor, leadership, all that kind of stuff. They actually are pretty solid in auto-resolve. And then when you consider all the other benefits that Throgg also gives his own stuff, like control in all provinces, leadership, upkeep, monstrous regeneration for Fimnir, melee defense, frenzy, those ancillaries, and also reducing global recruitment duration for all troll units, Fimnir, and Skinwolves, then you end up with a ridiculous level of power. And on top of that, the damn bastard also has special research available in his campaign, specifically the Ways of the Monstrous Horde, because when you're playing any Norsca campaign, you get Under Their Gaze, which gives you population surplus for newly captured settlements. But this also stacks with Ways of the Monstrous Horde, which also reduces construction time for troll buildings. So you end up in a situation where Norsca is just freaking absurd as a faction, and Throgg is just quite ridiculous. But it goes even further, because you see, when you're playing Throgg, you more often than not will end up in a war with Wulfric. And you get Wulfric's special teleportation mechanic if you confederate him, because it's attached to his army. And the thing about that teleportation mechanic, it doesn't just teleport Wulfric's own army, it teleports every nearby army or nearby fleet with him. Sure, the cooldown increases the more you teleport with you, but it is an absurd level of power. You get campaign mobility, you get massive amounts of trolls, you get recruitment of those trolls as well. And let me just say, there's a lot of unit capacity for these dens. So you're going to be running around with hundreds and hundreds of trolls, armies that can be teleported willy-nilly across the map. It is freaking absurd. By the way, Creative Assembly should absolutely fix, some of the tooltips. That PH over there with Nurgle just shows how much they care about solving some of these issues. But it's really hard to argue that Throgg doesn't have a ridiculously overpowered campaign at the moment. Ko signing out. Stay tuned for more.